When I talk about range is the gap between upper and lower limit. So let's say that I have a data set. And suppose I just go ahead and sort this data in ascending order. So, initially my data was 4, 8, 3, 2, 10. I sort it in the ascending order and I get 2, 3, 4, 8, 10. The upper limit of my data set is 10. The lower limit of my data set is 2. And the range is 8. So the highest minus the lowest value of the data set, that is called range of the data. It helps us to understand what's the variation in between, what's the highest most value and the lowest most value. The second thing that you should understand is called quartile deviation. Quartile deviation is half Q3 minus Q1. Now, in order to understand this, we must know what is Q3 and what is Q1. So just try and see here. Let's say I have this data set with me. I know that if I want to go to its middle value, this would be median. Median would be such that the 50% of the data set would be above this value and 50% of the data set would be below this value. Now, what is Q1? Q1 is such that if I go ahead and divide the data set, 1/4 of the data set would be above and 3/4 of the data set would be below. This value would be called as Q1. Similarly, what would be Q3? If I go ahead and I put a break here, such that 3/4 is above and 1/4 is down, then it would be Q3. Now, if you would have remembered, the formula of median that we studied was L plus N by 2 minus CF upon F into H. This is the formula of median for class intervals. What I can do is, instead of writing N by 2, I can rewrite this as 2n by 4. I am imagining that my data set is divided in 4 parts. 1, 2, 3. These are the 4 parts of the data set. First, second, third, and fourth. This is my entire data set that I have. And median is exactly half of the data set. So it is 2 by 4. 2 portions here and 2 portions here. Then quartile 1 would be here. It would be where 1/4 is here and 3/4 is here, which means I want to go ahead and divide my data set such that I take the first 1/4 of the observation. So for Q1, I will, instead of having 2 by 4, have here 1 by 4. If I write it like this, this is the formula for Q1. Similarly, for Q3, instead of writing this as 1 by 4, I just have to write this as 3 by 4. Then the formula will change into the formula of Q3. So for Q2, it is 2 by 4. Q2 is nothing but the median, second quartile, 2 above and 2 below. Q1 is 1 above and 3 below. Q3 is 3 above and 1 below. This is how you find quartiles. So in the most simple term, quartile is formulated from quarters. Quarter means dividing the data set in 4 parts. When you divide the data set in 4 parts, then the first part is called Q1. The first 3 parts, if I have that way, it's Q3. And now we define quartile deviation as the gap between Q3 and Q1 divided by 2. So quartile deviation is like the average gap between Q3 and Q1. You can rewrite this as average gap between Q3 and Q1. It's like saying, I found out what's the gap between Q3 and Q1. I am trying to go ahead and average that out. That will be quartile deviation. Achha, many books define something which is known as decile deviation also. Or at least they define something which is known as decile. Very simple on very similar basis. I have a data set and I am dividing this data set in 10 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. There are 10 equal parts that I have. And now I am saying, look, if I go ahead and take 5 portions here and take 5 portions here, this should be exactly half of my data set. I should have 5 portions here and 5 portions here. This is half of my data set. This half of the data set was called median. But if your data, instead of getting split in 2, is getting split in 4, then it becomes Q2. And if this data is getting split in 10, then this becomes D5, decile 5. 5 portions of the data set on one side and 5 portions of your data set on the other side. Now you can again find out. If I ask you find D1, it means you are saying that I want 1/10 of the data here and I want the remaining 9/10 of the data here. So instead of 1/4, what will you have? You will have here 1/10 and this will be now D1. You can find D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D7, D10, whatever you want, right? So if you ask me D9, I want 90% of the data set, 9/10. If you ask me D5, 5/10, but 5/10 will be n/2. That's the formula of the median. So I can divide my data set in 10 parts and just change this part. And accordingly, I will get the value. Same goes with something called as percentile also. Just you can note all of this. I don't have these in my notes, but just make a note of this also. Percentile is dividing the data set in 100 parts. Again, the formula is the same. You can find P10, P90. P10 will be n into 10/100 here in the formula. So whatever n is getting multiplied with, if I'm finding P10, it means there are 100 parts. And I'm finding what is first 10 parts versus the 90. So 10/100. If you ask me to find P90, it will be 90/100. P50, 50/100. That will be median, n/2. So you can divide your data set in just 2 parts using median, 4 parts quartile, 10 parts decile, 100 parts percentile. Just write down here. You can have median, you can have quartile, you can have decile, you can have percentile. Okay, if you ask me quartile deviation, Q3 minus Q1/2. Decile deviation, 10/9 minus 10/1/2. Percentile deviation, P90 minus P10/2. You ask me, I will just give you the extreme value ranges, subtract that and divide that by 2. This is how you can go ahead and find these values.